In Homo Deus, you also write, during the 19th and 20th centuries, as humanism gained increasing social credibility and political power, it sprouted two very different offshoots. Socialist humanism, which encompassed a plethora of socialist and communist movements, and evolutionary humanism, whose most famous advocates were the Nazis. So if you can just linger on that, what's the ideological connection between Nazism and communism as embodied by humanism?
And humanism basically is, the focus is on humans, that they are the most important thing in the world. They move history. But then there is a big question, what are humans? What is humanity? Now, liberals, they place at the center of the story individual humans, and they don't see history as a kind of necessary collision between big forces. They place the individual at the center. If you want to know, there is a bad, especially in the US today, liberal is taken as the opposite of conservative. But it's to test whether you're liberal, you need to answer just three questions. Very simple. Do you think people should have the right to choose their own government, or the government should be imposed by some outside force? Do you think people should have the right to the liberty to choose their own profession, or either born into some caste that predetermines what they do? And do you think people should have the liberty to choose their own spouse and their own way of personal life, instead of being told by elders or parents who to marry and how to live? Now, if you answered yes to all three questions, people should have the liberty to choose their government, their profession, their personal lives, their spouse, then you're a liberal. And most conservatives are also liberal. Now, communists and fascists, they answer differently. For them, history is not, yes, history is about humans. Humans are the big heroes of history, but not individual humans and their liberties. Fascists imagine history as a clash between races or nations. The nation is at the center. They say the supreme good is the good of the nation. You should have 100% loyalty only to the nation. Liberals say, yes, you should be loyal to the nation, but it's not the only thing. There are other things in the world. There are human rights. There is truth. There is beauty. Many times, yes, you should prefer the interests of your nation over other things, but not always. If your nation tells you to murder millions of innocent people, you don't do that, even though the nation tells you to do it. To lie for the national interest, in extreme situations maybe, but in many cases, your loyalty should be to the truth, even if it makes your nation looks a bit not in the best light. The same with beauty. How does a fascist determine whether a movie is a good movie? Very simple. If it serves the interest of the nation, this is a good movie. If it's against the interest of the nation, this is a bad movie. End of story. Liberalism says no. There is aesthetic values in the world. We should judge movies not just on the question whether they serve the national interest, but also on artistic value. Communists are a bit like the fascists. Instead, that they don't place the nation as the main hero, they place class as the main hero. For them, history, again, it's not about individuals, it's not about nations. History is the clash between classes. And just as fascists imagine in the end only one nation will be on top, the communists think in the end only one class should be on top, and that's the proletariat. And same story. Your 100% of your loyalty should be to the class. And like if there is a clash, say, between class and family, class wins. Like in the Soviet Union, the party told children, if you hear your parents say something bad about Stalin, you have to report them. And there are many cases when children reported their parents and their parents were sent to the gulag. Your loyalty is to the party, which leads the proletariat to victory in the historical struggle. And the same way in communism, art is only about class struggle. A movie is good if it serves the interest of the proletariat. Artistic values, there is nothing like that. And the same with truth. Everything that we see now in fake news, the communist propaganda machine was there before us. The level of lies, of disinformation campaigns that they orchestrated in the 1920s and 30s and 40s is really unimaginable.
So the reason these two ideologies, classes of ideologies, failed is the sacrifice of truth. Not just failed, but did a lot of damage. Is the sacrifice of truth and sacrifice of beauty.
And sacrifice of hundreds of millions of people, disregard, again, for human suffering. Like, okay, for our nation to win, in order for our class to win, we need to kill those millions. That was in ethics, aesthetics, truth. They don't matter. The only thing that matter is the victory of the state or the victory of the class. And and liberalism was the antithesis to that. It says no. Not only it has a much more complicated view of the world. And both communism and fascism, they had a very simple view of the world. There is one, your loyalty, 100% of it should be only to one thing. Now, liberalism has a much more complex view of the world. It says, yes, there are nations, they are important. Yes, there are classes, they are important, but they are not the only thing. There are also families. There are also individuals. There are also animals. And your loyalty should be divided between all of them. Sometimes you prefer this, sometimes you prefer that. That's complicated. But life is complicated.
But also, I think, maybe you can correct me, but liberalism acknowledges the corrupting nature of power when there's a guy at the top, sits there for a while, managing things, is probably going to start losing, a good sense of reality and losing the capability to be a good manager. It feels like the, communist and, fascist regimes don't acknowledge that basic characteristic of human nature that power corrupts.
Yes, they believe in infallibility.
Yeah,
they are in this sense they are very close to being religions. In Nazism, Hitler was considered infallible, and therefore you don't need any checks and balances on his power. Why do you need to balance an infallible genius? Mm-hmm. And it's the same with the Soviet Union. With Stalin and more generally with the Communist Party, the party can never make a mistake. And therefore you don't need independent courts, independent media, opposition parties, things like that, because the party is never wrong. You concentrate the same way 100% of loyalty should be to the party, 100% of power should be in the hands of the party. The whole idea of liberal democracy is embracing fallibility. Everybody is fallible. All people or leaders or political parties or institutions. This is why we need checks and balances, and we need many of them. If you have just one, then this particular check itself could make terrible mistakes. So you need, you need a press, you need the media to serve as a check to the government. You don't have just one newspaper or one TV station. You need many so that they can balance each other. And the media is not enough. So you have independent courts. You have free academic institutions. You have NGOs. You have a lot of checks and balances.